In this video, I want to give you some basics of R programming. The first thing I want to talk about is R script. R scripts are basically a way to save your R code into a file so that you can use the R code later. So let me go to R Studio and show you something. This here, R programming basics, is an R script. Basically, you can see that I have many lines of code here and I can save those for later use. Most likely you are seeing the Untitled R script, and basically what that means is that the R script you're working with has not been saved. Now if you want to save your R script, you want to go to File, Save As, and if you change that, for example, to example 2, if you just click Save, basically you will see that the name has been changed to example2.r, and that's an R script. Now, for this particular example that we're going to see today, we are going to be using the R programming basics.r script. That script you can find in the module number 1 and part number 2, and if you scroll down, you have here the R scripts, the R programming basics.r script, which if you download and basically double click if you're on a Windows machine, or just click if you're on a Mac, that will open up the R script for you. Okay, so the first thing I want to touch on is the assignment operator. An assignment operator is basically assigning a value to a variable. So for example, if I say x is equal to 5, what I'm trying to do is assign the value of 5 to the variable x. Now, one thing that I want to touch on, or basically to note, is that if you have something in an R script, that doesn't mean that R already has in its memory what the value of x is. For that to happen, you have to run the code on the console. Okay, so if I just say again x is equal to 5, that basically saves the value of 5 to the variable x. But if I want to print, for example, y, which I have on line number 11 on the R script, you will see that R will complain and say that the object y is not found. And the reason is that it has not been run on the console. So everything that you want to do, you must run on the console for R to know that it exists. So basically what I'm trying to say is that R scripts are basically just ways to save your code, but it has not been run yet. If I want to run a line of code, I can either highlight the line and click Run, or I can just click on the line and that will just run the line for you if you just click Run. Or if you want to run multiple lines, you can just highlight the lines that you want to run and just click Run, and that basically will transfer whatever you have on the R script to the console. The best way to know if something is already in the R environment is to look at this global environment, and you can see the values of the variables. Having said that, the assignment operator that we're going to use always is mostly the equal sign, but you can see here that there is a less than dash, which is a way to assign variables. It's used to be used before, but most likely we're just gonna be using the equal sign. There's other ways just like this one as well to assign a value to a variable. Okay, so having said that, just to remind you, remember that if the code has not been saved, you have the Untitled. Basically, if you want to run something, you can highlight and then just click Run. All right. The one important note that I want to mention is that when you are running R code, you need to understand that R is case sensitive. So for example, the variable course with a capital C is different from the variable course with a lowercase c. So it's important to know that everything that you run has to be very case sensitive. Again, I can run these 2 lines of code, and you can see that now I have the course, a variable in the environment, and if I run the line number 20, I can see that there is another object. And if you want to retrieve, in other words, to print an object, you can use the print function, and you can see that this is lowercase c. Or you can also use just the object name, and you can see that this one is different with a capital C. Okay, so there are some basic operations that I want to mention, and those are addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponentiation, and you can see some examples in the of them there. So for example, if x1 is equal to 10 and x2 is equal to 2, you can add the variables, divide them, you can use exponentiation. There's many other basic operations, but those are the main ones that we're going to use in this course. Again, if I want to go over the R script, you can see that here, and now I'm going to assign the value of 10 to x1 and the value of 2 to x2. I will highlight both and run. You can see that they are in the environment, and if you see the addition, you can see the answer there. The division, again, this transfers the R code to the console, and you can see also the exponentiation there as well. Okay, now built-in functions are ways, one of the most useful things in R are the built-in functions. So for example, the mean, the standard deviation, even the print function that we use, those are nice functions that allow us to do some things. There are functions that are built in, and there are other functions that we have to install them from packages. So let me give you some examples. Let's say that I create a vector. So a vector means that I have to assign not just one value to a variable, but multiple. I'm going to use the C function that stands for concatenate. So I'm going to concatenate these 4 values. So running that, I have the variable salary that is now numeric, and it has 4 different values. So it's a vector of values. I can use the mean function to get the mean of the salaries now. For example, if this variable were salary, the standard deviation, SD, the print, and again, you can see that those are built-in functions. As an example, try to see if you can get the summary of salary. You can pause this video and see if you can get the summary of using this summary function of salary. If you did, then the idea is that you get the summary function of salary, and then you can click run, and that will give you the summary values, for example, minimum, median, mean, maximums of the variables. Okay. Data types. The main data types are numeric, and those basically mean if the value is a number. We have strings or characters, and those that can be differentiated by you can put it in single quotes or double quotes, and basically logical or Boolean, and those are true, all capital, or false. You can get the data type of a variable by using the class function. So let's go to the code so that you can see how this works. All right, so I have x is equal to 5. So I'm going to run that again. I want to see what type of variable, what data type is x. And I just click run, and then I can see that that's a numeric. I can see greeting is another variable, but this seems different because I have some quotes under the value that we have. And here we have hello. And I can see class greeting is a character. Status is equal to true. That's another type of variable. So if I see the class, that's logical or Boolean. Right? Next thing is the data structures. We created already a vector. A vector is basically a concatenation of different values. So that's the way that you can basically create data, is by concatenating very different values. When you create a vector in R, the vector is already indexed. And what that means is that you can retrieve values from the vector. So for example, if I say x, and in brackets, I just put the value 1, that basically shows this first element, 3.2. If I say x4, that basically tells I want to see or retrieve the fourth element, which is going to be the value of 3.8. I can even retrieve more than one element, for example, from 1, 2, 3, using the column. So for example, that would retrieve 3.2, 4, and 3.6. I can go further and even eliminate an object by using the minus sign. So x minus 3 basically eliminates the third object, so it gets rid of that. Right, let's go to the code so we can see how this works. Again, I'm gonna run this vector. You can see that x is now all these numbers. If I want to show the first element, 3.2, that bracket and the value of 1 will retrieve it. 4, from 1 to 3, that's those 3 values, and then removing the third element. And you can see how that works, and that is especially useful. All right. Matrices are basically another type of data structure that basically concatenates values in columns and rows. So for example, if I have a matrix that looks like this, has 2 rows and 3 columns, I can use the matrix function to put that together. The way to do that is basically to use the matrix function and then to pass all the data using the C function. So yeah, I can put -2, 5, and 6, 5, 2, and 7. I just have to tell how many rows I have using the n row parameter. I don't really need to put the number of columns because R deduces it, but it's a good practice to have it there. So n number of columns is equal to 3. And then I'm just gonna say that I'm putting the data by rows. In other words, I'm putting the first row and then the second row. All right, so just to give you an example, this is the matrix, the code here, and I'm gonna run it. If I want to print A, I'm just gonna go to the console and do that here. You can see that that's the matrix. So if I want to do the class of A, it tells me that it is a matrix or an array, which is the same thing. Okay, as an exercise, try to input this matrix and see if you can do it. It has actually 3 rows and 2 columns. You can pause the video and see if you can do it. Right, so in other words, if you did that, then you can basically practice with creating matrices. Matrices are also indexable. So what that means is that I can show the first row and the first column. So if I want to just take this value, I can use this notation. Row 1, column 1. If I want to select row 2, column 3, in other words, this value, then I want to use the brackets, and that comma will basically subset the values that I want. I can even use from rows 1 to 2 to columns 1 to 2. In that way that works. So let me show you how it works. So here I have the same matrix, and I want to do the first element, first row, first column, second row, third column, from the first row to the second row, and the first column to the second column, and that's there. Right? So finally, I want to talk about data frames. Data frames are basically ways to concatenate variables together, different types, just like matrices. But the only difference is with data frames, you can concatenate different types of variables. So for example, if I have a salary and I concatenate the 4 values, I have experience, let's say in years, and I have the class, which is a string value, freshman, sophomore, junior. I can use the data frame to put the 3 variables together. And now this will create a data structure that is similar to a matrix, but it is a data frame. Okay, so having said that, I want to go here, and this is in 3 lines. It doesn't have to be. You can put all of this in 1 line. So I'm gonna run it. And now you can see that the data frame 1 is just this data that contains the 4 rows together. The class of data frame 1 is a data frame. And this is going to be very useful to use.